Well, welcome to week 3 of web design. I was delighted to read your peer posting messages all week, and I'm glad that most of you, anyway, are getting settled in and are having fun learning web design. It's a lot of fun. You can do a lot of really great things with it. I just wish we had longer than 8 weeks. Back when we were doing it in 11 weeks, it was tough to get it all done. And so now with an 8-week scenario here, I've really had to push a lot of things into the web mastering class. And so what we're not able to do now, then we'll be able to finish up later on. Okay, so let's just look now, first of all, at what we need to do for week 3. It's the same routine, guys. Look at the learning objectives in Blackboard. And you have 2 forums to post in this week, like always. The assignments from the textbook, chapters 6, 7, and 10. This is all going to be dealing with creating links to resources. And sometimes you'll have a link between one web page and another web page. Sometimes you'll have a link to a video that's in some different file. So it's all about hyperlinks next week. I'd like to talk to you for just a moment about the research forum discussion that you've had this week about web standards. Let me see if I can clarify this just a little bit. I'm not the oldest man on the planet Earth, but I'm getting there. I am the same age as Steve Wozniak. He and I are about a month apart in age. Steve Wozniak, you may remember, is the guy who invented the first ever PC. But it was actually the Mac that he originally invented, of course, and that turned into Apple Corp, and he became a multimillionaire, and I became an old teacher. So I go back in this stuff to way before there was any such thing as the World Wide Web. The first web page ever was published in 1991. 1991, so that's not that far back. What was that, 30 years ago, I guess now. So, but in that 30 years, what happened after Tim Berners-Lee got started with the whole web and everything, then eventually the whole world realized that it's going to be a big deal, the web is going to be. And so the organization was founded, the W3C, World Wide Web Consortium. And they came up with standards, and there really are standards, there's no doubt. This is not messing around stuff. But again, standards are, as some of you noted in your comments this week in the research forum, standards sometimes are in the eyes of the beholder. But the way that it works is that, we have to ask the question, who writes the standards? Is it Tim Berners-Lee? No, but take my word for it. He has his hands in it. He's still alive, still kicking, still active to this day. But what happened is that through the years, then the different browser manufacturers came together. So that means that the people, certainly at Google, the people, obviously, first of all, at Mozilla, who are the authors of Firefox, and at first, and even Opera, which is a very good browser, and many other browsers. There's several browsers in the world. But then even Microsoft originally was going to sit down all together as one great big committee, and they're all going to agree how that whenever they build their browser, that they'll build their browser in such a way that it will handle our markup code. And the way it got started, there were a lot of problems, and it really was over copyrights and profits, and Microsoft backed out of it. And so for years and years, we went along with Google and Firefox and Opera and some of the other big name browsers. They were working really well together, and we could write code that worked great with their browsers. But the web developers that I know and have met at meetings and what have you down through the years, everybody swears by the standards, but everybody swears at Microsoft. And for years and years, the worst possible browser on the planet Earth has always been the Internet Explorer browser. And it was so bad until about 2 or 3 years ago, Microsoft sent out a message and says, we're done with Internet Explorer. Microsoft has literally walked away from Internet Explorer, and even though you'll still find it on your Windows computers, it no longer exists at Microsoft. Nobody is being paid at Microsoft to work on Internet Explorer anymore. And so what Microsoft did a couple of years back is that they switched over and they decided we're going to throw away Internet Explorer and we're going to get our own browser, but we're going to base our browser on Chromium. Now, you may recognize the name because Chromium is very close to the word Chrome. And Google owns Chrome, and the Chrome browser is Google's version of a browser that's built upon a platform called Chromium. And the Chromium is an open source bit of code, which means that Microsoft was able to get their hands on it. And so the newest and modern Edge browser that you see, and the newest versions of it are actually very, very good. And Microsoft is simply adding some colors and services and bits and pieces to it to make it, uniquely Microsoft's. But the browser that I'm actually using right now with Visual Studio Code is Edge. I'm using Edge right now instead of Chrome. And some of y'all, I can tell you, it's working fine. It's not what I was told maybe 6 months ago, but it is working fine now. But Microsoft is back in the game. Microsoft for years decided to march to their own drums, and then they quit. And now they came back in, and they're saying everything except, yeah, y'all were right, we were wrong, we made a crummy piece of software, crummy browser, the world's worst ever browser. And so Microsoft has given up and come back in. I can just show you one thing real quick. In our instructions, and it's the same way in your weekly coding. Up here in the head section, the code that we have here, meta HTTP equivalent equals x-UA compatible, that entire line is still a leftover bit of the many more kinds of things that we had to embed in web pages just to get our pages to work on Microsoft or on Internet Explorer. Okay, so that's all over. Microsoft's back in the game. They were cooperating. And what happens? The World Wide Web Consortium has a work group, and they are the ones who are writing the standards for HTML and CSS. You can come in here and just click your way through it and go around and just read about every one of the elements and so on. So web standards, what that means is that the committee, the work group, writes, but remember the work group is made up of the people who make the browsers. And what they do is they agree upon standards by which they will all build their browsers. So the reason we call them standards with reference to us is because we have to write our code in just a certain kind of way in order to make it work on those browsers that the committee has agreed that this is what we're going to do. And so that's what it means by web standards. If you don't write your code right, you can't expect it to act right. It may work on your computer, but believe me, there's lots of people out there in the world who never update their computers. Listen, there are people still running Internet Explorer 6. And I promise you, the code, the pages that you're working on right now would not look like anything. It would look terrible on Internet Explorer 6. And so we need to learn to write our code correctly because the World Wide Web Consortium has agreed this is how we're going to make the browsers if you guys will just write the code the way we are asking you to write the code. So that's what this whole thing about web standards is all about. So the coding assignment, you're only going to be creating one file in week 3, and that's the Constitution.html file. You're going to do a lot of work to that one. And of course, the grading policy, the exams, and the information about that. You have the peer forum, research forum, quiz 3, and then you've got these videos. So let me talk about the videos for a second, because I had one question come up this week about when somebody clicked on the video and opened it up. Problems that you learned. Opened it up in YouTube, and oh my gosh, it's so blurry. What in the world? Let me just explain this real quick for you, make it real simple for you. I'm shooting these videos in very high, I'm working on a 4K system. And so you're not going to have any trouble with resolution unless you forget to do one thing. And that is, when you start your videos, always, if you're getting blurry text on the screen, click the little cog icon, click it once, and under quality, you'll see here that there are several options. And if you have it set on 360 or 480, it's going to be hard to see things clearly. If you click the 1080 and look at it in HD, then whenever you run this, then as you can see, you're not going to have any trouble if you're watching these things at 1080p. All right, so let's go back and talk about what you're going to be doing this week. You're going to be creating the constitution.html file, and in there you're going to do a lot of markup of the code. Now let me tell you, you really need to watch the videos carefully, because I have some shortcuts in there, or some key tips, pro tips, that will help you learn how to use Emmet to make this go a lot faster. And back in the days, I don't know if you've noticed this, but in the textbook, Jennifer Robbins has beginners start working in a program called Notepad++, which is really just a muscle-bound version of Notepad. And in there, you basically, all of your opening element tags and all of your closing element tags, you have to create by hand, every single one of them. And that just takes you forever. And the first semester I taught this class, I realized real quick that we were going to have to move over and teach beginners how to use some more advanced skills. And it was working great under brackets until brackets disappeared. And now we're doing it under Visual Studio Code. And there are some really good, very professional, very fast skills that you'll be able to learn this term. So I hope you keep enjoying the class. Let me know if you have any questions. Do me a really big favor. If you find the word brackets anywhere, let me know. I'll try to get that fixed. And also, if you come across any mistakes that I make in my weekly instructions, please let me know. I wish I could offer you some sort of a finder's fee, that if you found a mistake and, maybe I could do something. But I really want to find errors in the instructions, because I'm human. My wife and I have been married for 51 years now, and she'll be the first to tell you I make a lot of mistakes. So let me know when you come across a mistake, and I'll do my best to get it fixed for you. God bless, and best wishes this week.